Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today we are going to talk about everything that I read back in November, which I know, a long time ago. Over the course of November, I read 6 books. They were 4 romances, a contemporary or lit fic, I guess technically, and a manga. So I think I am going to start with the romance because that is what is sitting on top of the little book stack I have right here. Before I get into the physical books, I think I will talk about the romance audiobook that I listened to at the beginning of the month, and that was Neon Gods by Katie Robert, and this is the first book in the Dark Olympus series, which all features retellings of Greek myths. Yeah, it's basically Neon Gods is the retelling of the Hades and Persephone story, which honestly is it's not my favorite of the Greek myths, but it is one that I have honestly been really interested in seeing all of the different takes on it over the past several years especially. I'm a huge fan of the webcomic Lore Olympus, and I'm really enjoying like this idea of, rather than a simple love story or it being that Hades kidnapped and did terrible things to Persephone, I am kind of liking this new take that a lot of people are doing, that either Persephone was looking for an escape from the actual harsh realities of Olympus and dealing with Zeus, who is of course the biggest douche canoe, or her finding a new home and reaching her own like power and empowerment in becoming like partners with Hades and becoming like the queen of the underworld, which she ultimately is. Besides being like a goddess of spring and fertility, she also is of course the queen of the underworld, which is pretty badass. So yeah, liking a lot of those retellings, and this one is very interesting. So this version of Olympus that Katie Robert has created, and I guess we'll probably learn more over the course of the books. I am on the fence whether I want to continue with the series or not, just because there were some characters who have been introduced in the first book, and I know that they get love stories in this series, and I don't particularly like these people, so I don't really know if I want to hear about their happy endings or not, but I don't know. We'll see. But this world is basically, it sounds like it might be a part of our actual world, like Olympus does exist within our grand scheme of the United States, it sounds like, just from the way things are worded. And I think even like San Francisco is brought up at some point, making it seem kind of like Olympus is maybe supposed to be on the East Coast, which is crazy. But yeah, so it basically, Olympus in general, there's the upper city and the lower city, and it's divided by this giant ridge and the river, which I believe is the river Styx, and it's basically, yeah, just this giant city, and everyone in there is all part of this whole everything. They're kind of blocked off from the rest of the world. It sounds like they're in their own little dome area basically, and you can eventually buy your ability to get out of Olympus, but it takes a lot of money and also some trickery is what it sounds like. So this seems like our world, but there is magic afoot, or there is something going on, because there are barriers that it is damn near impossible for people to actually get through, whether to escape Olympus or to go from the upper city to the lower city. Really 100% sure where the magic scale is or where anything is. I guess maybe this technically also would count under urban fantasy in the very slightest degree. Anyway, in this world of Olympus, basically there are a few roles, such as Zeus and the Hades and I believe also Poseidon, which are there's a specific term for it that I can't quite remember. But basically, they're ancestral roles, so they are passed down through a family line. And then the other roles within the society, Demeter, for example, those chosen are elected. They are elected to that role for Demeter or Hades and stuff like that. And they become these like high-powered people in charge of whatever things. Like Demeter is in charge of the food supplies and everything within Olympus. This story starts out following Persephone, who is, of course, one of Demeter's daughters, but she also has 3 other sisters, and interesting because within the actual myths, these women are not related to each other at all, but they've all kind of taken on these roles, basically. I'm interested to know if they had to give up their names, too. It sounds like they did. Again, this is a whole series, so I assume we're going to get more explanation over the course of it, or whatever. And these daughters of Demeter hate the fact that their mother has been elected. They hate that they had to leave the country to live in this shitty-ass city where they have to be fake and hold to a persona the whole time just to be able to survive within the city. They can't trust anyone because it's all underhanded dealings. It's corrupted. It's a dangerous life, pretty much. And Persephone finds that Zeus, who has gone through 3 Heras at this point, his Heras, the women he marries and become Hera, have all died under mysterious circumstances, and the rumor is that Zeus is killing them, or arranging for them to be killed. And he has now decided that Persephone is to be his next Hera. And she desperately wants to get out of there, so she runs off, manages to get to the lower city with some injury, and is saved by Hades, who previously she thought might have just been a myth, because the rumor there was that Hades had, that line had died many years before when the old Hades had been killed. But guess what? He had a son, and his son has been running things in the lower city. So there's a lot of like political intrigue and stuff, which is not honestly my thing. Normally I don't really go for a lot of that, but I found this world particularly fascinating. Hades and Persephone's relationship, in the very beginning I wasn't really sold on it, because he, even though, to be completely honest, in my reading history I do tend to have a weakness for the broody, sad male character. I did really not, I wasn't fully on board with them based on how pushy he was, even if he was just pushy to the fact of trying to take care of her and make sure that she heals, because she did get hurt in her running, and, you know, make sure that she is ultimately alright. But at the same time, I don't like guys who can't seem to let women make choices for themselves. That just really pisses me off. So I wasn't fully on board with their relationship within the initial, like, first introduction of it. But over time, seeing how they came to care about each other and certain things that went on, their plan ultimately to save each other, to help each other in their goals, him of protecting the lower city and the people he is responsible for, and her for getting the hell away from Zeus and trying to get out of Olympus in general. The two of them coming together to try to help each other with these goals. It had like the little bits of fake romance stuff, which is a trope that I really enjoy, fake relationships becoming real ones and everything. And something that honestly I have to say about this, there is some kinky stuff that happens within this book that I was kind of prepared for a little bit, because I had heard that this was a dark romantasy set, essentially, even though, again, the fantasy is very low levels, like I said. But it's kind of in that like dark romance genre. So I was anticipating there to be some kind of like weird kinky stuff, and to be honest, it wasn't that weird. Like for the past few months I've read a lot weirder. But it was kind of very voyeuristic, and there were a few things that happened that I was like, whoa. But something that I really did love about this series, besides the two of them coming together and learning more about the city and how everything works, and really coming to appreciate the lower city and this interesting take on the underworld, essentially, that I really found to be fascinating. And learning more about these characters themselves, especially Hades' like backstory and everything. Something I will say that I really liked was that those sexual elements of their relationship, because I feel like this book was doing what E.L. James wished she could make 50 Shades of Grey do, only Katie Robert managed it, and managed it so fucking perfectly. Like, we have a, not exactly that level of like BDSM relationship, but we have light tinges of that kind of relationship in there, but everything is handled so incredibly respectfully. Clearly research was done into the actual community and how relationships and everything is handled specifically. And again, the character, there is actual character growth. There is actual like vulnerability, there are actual things, and even though the characters themselves at different points in the book would annoy me with how stubborn they could be or how they acted, again, there was that character growth, and there were reasons as to why it made sense why they acted the way they did. And the writing was just superb also. Although I have to say, I listened to an audiobook, so it was honestly kind of hilarious to hear the male narrator try to do Persephone's voice and vice versa. It was hilarious to hear her try to do Hades' voices. That was really funny. But still, it, you know, very well done, and you know what, I do mean to call some shade on 50 Shades of Grey, because honestly it's a terrible fucking book. And like I said, this is what E.L. James wished she could have created. A respectful, well-written, well-rounded, kinky romance. Essentially fan fiction, because it's a myth retelling. There you go. This is what she wished she could have done, and Katie Robert pulled it off, so, there, calling her out. Alright, anyway, yeah, I really did like it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Like I said, dark romance, I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I had an idea of what to expect. I have tried to read a couple of other technical ones before, and I've been kind of on the fence about them, or one of them I DNF'd, so I was really pleasantly surprised by how much I actually enjoyed this one. Like I said, I did have my issues with it here and there, which is why I ended up giving it like 4 stars instead of like 5 stars, but I did enjoy it, and yeah, like I said, I'm kind of on the fence on whether I want to continue with the series or not. I might at least give book 2 a try, but there are a couple of characters that I think are assets that I don't know. I might skip those or not. Yeah, anyway. Then I also read, actually a complete series. I read the Brown Sisters trilogy by Talia Hibbert. So first of all was Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is a book that I have read previously. I don't think I read it last year, I think it was the year before. And this follows, of course, Chloe Brown. She had a near-death-ish sort of experience, and she has been dealing with chronic illness for years up to this point, and when she had this like near-death experience kind of thing, she saw her life flash before her eyes and was kind of depressed about it, so she decided she's going to go out on her own, and she's making a list to unfuck her life, essentially, where she goes out on her own. She gains her independence and does something, you know, does something bad, has meaningless sex, does like, travels, does all of these things that she has been putting off because she has basically up to this point just been kind of surviving and learning how to cope with her chronic illness. So just kind of doing those things. So she moves into this apartment building, and I think she's only been there like, I don't know, a month or maybe 2 months or something like that. The custodian of the apartment building, his name is Red, and he is kind of this bad boy kind of guy. He's got some tattoos, he's got kind of long hair, dresses kind of scruffy, I guess, basically, and he has like a motorcycle, bad boy kind of thing. But he also is like, he's super like kind, he's funny, the residents in the building like adore him, and he also is an artist. And Red has come to this building to face his own demons, essentially. He was an up-and-coming artist, and because of situations that he went through with that and a very toxic relationship he used to be in, he kind of abandoned all of that and has now been helping out one of his friends by being the live-in custodian at the apartment building. But he still secretly paints in his own apartment, which happens to be across the way from Chloe, and she has seen him on more than one occasion, shirtless, painting, and just passionately painting in his apartment, and she has become immensely intrigued by him. And he doesn't like how uppity and, like, maybe not uppity, snobby, I guess, and how posh she seems, but at the same time he also is kind of intrigued by her. She basically kind of comes to an agreement with him that she will help him out, because she also does for work, she's kind of like a freelance kind of computer person. She makes like websites and stuff like that, and she agrees to help him with that kind of thing if he will help her complete some of her lists. Basically, ride a motorcycle, have a drunken night out, go camping, have meaningless but enjoyable sex, and all of her list of unfucking her life and having a really exciting one, basically. And so they, come together to do this, all the while, having this attraction to each other that is growing. I really liked this book a lot. Chloe is definitely kind of that type A personality that in my own life I butt heads with a little bit. So I wasn't always like a fan of her, to be completely honest. And there is a nickname that Red gives her that I found just beyond cringy, and it made me uncomfortable every time he used it because it was just very embarrassing. But I did really, again, enjoy them. I enjoy their character growth, the times when they are able to get comfortable enough with each other to share like this, have this vulnerability with each other. I really enjoyed their relationship. Again, these books in general are just all like, I mean, spicy and hot as hell, but there's like genuine respect between the characters and stuff, which is also just awesome to see. There are, of course, the third act mess up kind of thing, which is honestly not something I'm like huge into, the giant miscommunication thing, but I think that it was handled fairly well over the course of them, especially, yeah, I think this one was probably the worst offender of the third act miscommunication breakup thing, but it wasn't too bad, and I really loved their relationship as it grew. And I also really loved the representation that was had in here. Besides the fact that this is a diverse romance, I also really liked the discussion, like having a character that has a chronic illness. I think that's really important to be represented within books and within the romance community. I also really liked the idea of discussing a toxic or abusive relationship, especially when it is the male partner who ends up being the victim of that. I think that's also a really important thing to be discussed. And I think that this was done very well. And I really liked Chloe, the introduction of Chloe's very bizarre rich family. So that was that, and then I continued with the other books about her sisters. So there was Take a Hint, Dani Brown, which again is the fake relationship trope, so of course my absolute favorite, which is funny because this ended up not being my favorite of the series. I really loved it, but my favorite of the series is actually the third book. But so Danica is just, she's got a plan in place. She is she's like a teacher's aide, and she is also like getting her education. She wants to be, I believe, a full-time like professor. She wants to gain like academic renown and well known for all of this. She has her goals in hand, but honestly she is not on the lookout for love. She has no interest in that whatsoever, wants honestly nothing to do with it. She's been there, she was hurt badly, and she just wants to have this kind of occasional sexual release with someone and just call it a day. Doesn't need any of that. Enter a crazy circumstance where she ends up being rescued from a building by one of the campus security guards, Saphir, who Zaf and her are actually kind of friends, and he ends up rescuing her from the building, and it is videotaped, and this videotape goes viral. And to help Zaf out, because Zaf is a former professional rugby player, and he has his own like organization, like a foundation that he has kind of set up to really teach rugby to young boys. And not only is it to teach them like teamwork and leadership and to play rugby and do all of this stuff, but it's also helping them get in touch with their own like feelings and showing them that, hey, just because we are tough guys and we do this thing doesn't mean that we can't like communicate about how we actually feel and stuff like that. Is very admirable, and he's trying to really get these things off the ground, and it would really help him out to get some more notoriety for this foundation for everything. So she agrees to pretend to be in a relationship for a while with him to kind of ride this viral train, to really help him out. And of course, fake relationships turn real relationship, as I love all the time. Honestly, the thing is that Dani is attracted to Saphir. Saphir has all kinds of warm, fuzzy feelings about Dani. But Saphir is a romantic at heart. He tends to read romance novels. He just is all about that, and he wants someone to love and share his life with, and Dani is like basically allergic to commitment. She wants nothing to do with that. She definitely 100% wants to seduce the hell out of him because he's hot to trot, but she does not want to actually have like a whole thing. So complications. I really liked this like a lot. As much as both of them were like, I wanted to just knock their heads together a couple of times with how ridiculous they were being about themselves and each other, and Dani especially. I was like, girl, you need therapy. Like, you gotta talk to somebody about what is your issue with commitment. But I did, again, enjoyed their relationship, enjoyed things as they progressed. I thought it was very cute and sweet. I love their banter with each other and the flirting and the silliness and everything. I loved Zaf. He is such a absolute cinnamon roll, and I really loved his relationship with his family. I really loved also just him and Dani together. I liked that, again, there was inclusion. We have a diverse romance. We have a discussion of both of their cultures, like, and also Danny is a witch, and it discussed a little bit about what she was taught. And I just really loved that those were included. I loved, that Danny was also bi. I really enjoyed, yeah, the diverse romance again in the representation. And I thought this was like really cute and really funny. And the ending made me honestly kind of kick my feet a little bit. Like, I was very happy about it. So yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. Did I even say what I rated all of these? Hold on a second. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, was 4 stars. Take a Hint, Danny Brown was 5 stars. And then the third book was Act Your Age, Eve Brown. This is about Eve, the youngest of the Brown sisters. And Eve struggles. Eve has some struggle finding things that she loves and sticking with them. And a large part of that has to do with fear of like disappointing people. And that is a huge chunk of it. And she is the one who still lives at home. Her sisters are out on their own, have been out on their own. They're also now in relationships by this point in this series, and she still is home. She's gone back to school. She has done all of these things. She's tried different careers, and it never really works out, and she always seems to find a reason why to get out of these things or to quit something. And her family up to this point is just really frustrated with her. And after another instance of her saying, well, that was fun, but I'm over it now, her family tries to sit her down, mainly her parents, and kind of tell her that, like, yo, you gotta figure your shit out. You're too old to be doing this anymore. And they do kind of use the word that they are disappointed in her. And that's a lot for her to take. And she ends up running away, just getting in her car and driving off, and she finds an inn in another county, a bed and breakfast that is looking for some help. So she ends up going in, kind of half sitting down for an interview, and one of the guys who is at the interview, who is the owner of this bed and breakfast, is just really kind of unimpressed with her, really rude, and she decides, okay, whatever, she's gonna leave, accidentally ends up hitting him with her car and injuring him, so he 100% does desperately now need help. Eve just kind of moves in to help. She is kind of her family's certified hot mess, and she honestly feels kind of like a hot mess as well. Jacob, on the other hand, who owns the B&B, Jacob is always in control. He has a specific way of doing things. He has a set, like, schedule and a plan and everything, and he is not expecting this fucking whirlwind with lavender hair to come in and just mess everything up and change everything. But he does honestly need the help, and the fact of the matter is that she is good at what she does. She is way better with people than he is. He is good at the hospitality part, but he struggles with the actual people facing part of the job, and Eve is just way better at that. And they start this amazing, like, partnership and friendship that ends up turning into something more. And it's really interesting, again, like this dynamic. So it's the grumpy sunshine dynamic, which is something that I've talked about recently, although to be completely honest, I usually tend to enjoy the where the guy is the sunshine and the girl is grumpy, which also could be the black cat golden retriever kind of thing too. There's unless that's more of a subgenre than that. Anyway, this is the opposite. The dude is very grumpy and Eve is just very sunshine and rainbows and spunky craziness, chaos. I loved the diversity of this. We have discussion also of being on the spectrum. Jacob is definitely autistic. He was diagnosed years ago. He knows this. He has ways of handling things and how his life is set up and everything. And he also struggles a lot with letting people in enough to deal with that, because his parents ended up just dumping him off. They neglected the hell out of him when he was growing up, and how he handles things and how he is with people is just kind of how he's coped over the years. And Eve comes in, and also potentially on the spectrum, but never diagnosed. Doesn't know anything about that. Has always just thought of herself as the hot mess, irresponsible one of her family that everyone always ends up being disappointed in. And I really liked seeing these like differences in within them, and also how things are handled, and also how they relate to each other, how they handle each other, how they come together to at first work hard with things as partners, then as friends, and then eventually as like lovers. I really enjoyed that journey over the time. I liked their interactions with each other. My first impression of Jacob was like, what a dickhead. But then you read more and you're like, oh, that's why he's kind of standoffish. This is why things are like this, and how they dealt with each other, learning about each other, and coming together again, sharing that like vulnerability and everything. I really loved that, and it blossomed into something truly beautiful that I really loved, and this ended up becoming my favorite book of the trilogy. I adored this. This was a great way, honestly, I think, to end the book series, and I just really loved it. I loved it a whole bunch. So this was also 5 stars. So yeah, 100% recommend this trilogy because it's freaking great, and I need to check out more of Talia Hibbert's writing because it's beautiful. What else did I read? So that was all of the romances. Then I also ended up reading Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Tsukigawa. This is a story about a man named Sentaro. He basically, this is another one about people feeling like a failure. Yikes. He has had a hard time. He was in prison, and coming out of prison years ago, he found it really hard to get hired for anywhere, to do any kind of job, and he was given a chance to help run a dorayaki shop. Yeah, he had help trying to run a dorayaki shop, and eventually the man who helped him kind of passed away, and his wife asked Sentaro to just keep up the shop, keep doing things, keep making the dorayaki and everything. And he has reached a point where he just doesn't care. He hates the dorayaki. He doesn't think it tastes very good. People just seem to pass the shop by a lot of the times. There are some people who come in, but it's not that many. The shop is failing, to be quite honest, and he kind of feels like a failure and doesn't enjoy his life. He is just basically surviving at this juncture. He goes to the shop, he makes the stuff, he sells it, he gets drunk, he goes home, passes out, starts all over again the next day. He is not really having much of a life. He once, when he was younger, wanted to be a writer, and that dream has just kind of completely disappeared. Enter Tokyo, who is an older lady who knows how to make dorayaki and has made sweets for years, and she wants to help. She has disfigured hands and doesn't really like to talk a lot about her past. It's kind of fairly troubled as well. And at first he kind of turns her away because he figures, well, people aren't going to want to get anything from a woman who has disfigured hands. But then after a while she's very insistent, has him taste the sweet bean paste that she made herself, and it is amazing. So he has her come in and make the bean paste for him and kind of really teach him how the proper way of doing it, which is very much about care and timing and how you do things, the energy that you put into it, which from my understanding of what I know about like Japanese culture and cooking and stuff like that, that seems very reminiscent of what I know about like care and a specific things are done a particular way because reasons. So that was very on par with that. I'm not 100% sure when this book is supposed to be set. It's a fairly recent book. I think it was written within the last 10 years, I want to say, but parts of the book felt a little bit older, like it might be sometime in the 80s or maybe early 90s, potentially, is when things were supposed to be set, possibly. But anyway, this is these two becoming friends with a goal in mind, and then also there is a young high school girl who is also struggling, who ends up becoming like a regular at the shop and getting to know the both of them. And the three of them form this kind of like friendship. I really liked this book. Like, the matter of making dorayaki anyway, I don't think I've ever actually had a dorayaki, but it sounds delicious, and I really liked learning more about the making of that and the running of the shop. I really enjoyed the blooming friendship between these characters and learning more about them, and especially what had happened to Tokyo over time. And I'm going to mention something about this book that is something that comes out over time, but if you don't want to know, if you want to read this and you don't want to know anything about it, I'll put the book down. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a thing about the book, and when I put the book up again, that is when the spoiler is over. Okay? Alright. So, an important part of this book, the dark secret that Tokyo is hiding, the fact that her hands are disfigured and everything, is because she had Hansen's disease. Now, I did not know what Hansen's disease was prior to this book. Hansen's disease is basically leprosy. And I knew that that was a thing that is out there, but I didn't realize that it was such a issue that people are still dealing with it today, or that it was such an issue so in such a recent past. Like, when people talk about leprosy, I mean, having been brought up Catholic, most of the time that's what you read about in like the Bible and stuff like that. People don't really talk about it, or maybe you might hear something about terrible practices that people had in Europe in like the 1500s or something. It's not something that you really think about as being an issue that occurs today, but it does still happen today. People still deal with this today. And as far as Hansen's disease goes, in Japan, there was actually a institute that was set up in Japan where people were sent to live, and they were completely isolated from the rest of society. And there was a lot of just stigma attached with Hansen's disease because it was seen as so terrible and as something that is just so contagious that they basically just isolate a bunch of people. And Tokyo had to leave her family. She was taken from her family when she was a young girl and sent to this institute, and a lot of people were separated from their families and never saw them again. And eventually, they were cured. Technically, medicines and advancements were made, but the stigma was still there. And even though they're not contagious, they still have to walk around with the signs of this disease. And there is the stigma. They're not able to really go out into society, even though the institute technically has been closed down. Technically, the walls are open. Laws have been changed. They don't have to isolate anymore. But that stigma is still there. Much like, I don't know, what is another example? AIDS, I guess, kind of similar to that. The stigma is there. Unfortunately. This deals a lot with that talked a discussion of the stigma surrounding Hansen's disease and how kind of Japan dealt with that. And actually, from reading this book, I ended up looking up a lot of stuff online because I wanted to know more about everything. And the thing I really liked about this book is this took a part of history, a dark part of history, and brought it to light, basically, in such a beautiful, bittersweet kind of story. And I think that was so beautifully done, and it is something that I really loved about this, is to take something that I, up until last month, knew absolutely nothing about, and didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it, and really took this part of Japanese history and was like, here, look at this. These are real people. It's not a stigma that you can just turn your head away from. These are people. Look at them. And I thought that was really beautiful, and I'm very intrigued by this author now, and I really want to know more about him, and I really want to read more things from him, because, yeah. So, yeah, I thought that this particular story and this discussion of this particular part of history involved with Tokyo's past, I think that was really well done and very beautiful, I will say. If you want to have your heart completely ripped out, but also feel very warm inside, I think this is the book for you. I was not anticipating crying with this book. I 100% did. I really, really loved it though. And it is very beautiful, and I highly recommend it. And I gave Sweet Bean Paste 5 stars. And the last book that I read in November was The Girl from the Other Side, Ciel al Rune by Nagabe. This is the Omnibus Volume 4, so it's the last part of the series. I'm not going to talk a ton about this because it is the last part of a series, but I have mentioned it fairly recently. This is a series that follows this outsider named Teacher. He is called Teacher. He, months ago, found a little girl named Shiva who was abandoned outside the city, and ends up taking care of her and raising her and helping her out. She names him Teacher. She is hoping that her auntie will come and find her and take her back home. In this world, there are outsiders and insiders. And outsiders are all cursed. They have all been infected, and they turn into these dark, kind of shadowy creatures, and it is extremely contagious. All you have to do basically is touch an outsider and you will be cursed. So, whole parts of this country have been decimated, basically as a way of trying to rout out this scourge of cursed creatures. A lot of these creatures, they don't stay shadow creatures, they actually transform into other things eventually, but Teacher is interesting because he still has somehow managed to maintain some of his humanity, despite the fact that he doesn't have a lot of sensations. He doesn't need to eat or drink or sleep or do much of anything. It's harder for him to be killed, but he still dresses in human clothes. He still has thoughts and speech, even though he can't remember his past at this point. But he still has maintained this amount of humanity. And part of that seems to be helped by the fact that he is taking care of Shiva. So this is basically learning more about their world, what the curse is, what is going on, why was Shiva abandoned, and what is up with Teacher being so different than the others, outsiders. So, like I said, this is the last volume in the series. We get some answers to a lot of questions. We finally learn Teacher's backstory, which was like, wow. There were a couple of questions that I had. that still have not fully been answered, but I'm thinking that maybe that is the point. The point is it's open-ended. You don't quite 100% know. But and at the end of the day, does it matter? I found the ending to be just crazy, like absolutely batshit crazy. Not at all what I was expecting or anticipating at all. But I will have to say the reason why this ended up being like a 4-star instead of a 5-star for this ending was because of those open-ended questions, that it didn't fully flesh everything out. Like I said, we did get some answers, we did get some backstory, but there were things that I still had questions on. And there were a couple of things that were like, well, this is going into a philosophical place that I don't think my brain is fully equipped to understand entirely. So if you are looking for a manga series that goes to some dark places but has like a sweet found family story but does go to some dark places and kind of disturbing places, and then has a lot of philosophical questions about curses and humanity and everything, this is probably the series for you. And look at, I mean, that's just cute too. It's a little snowman on the back. But yeah, ultimately, pretty good series. I'm glad that I finished it. I wish that there was more of like a bigger OVA and things of this story, because I think it would be really good. If you want to talk about another one that made me cry, let me tell you part of Teacher's backstory. Yikes. But anyway, beautiful. 4 stars. Anyways, guys, that was everything that I read back in November. I'd call it a fairly good reading month. Sorry it is so incredibly late. That has just been life lately. Anyway, I hope that you have been having a wonderful month. You had a great holiday if you celebrate any of them in December. Otherwise, I just hope you've had a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching. Look for some more videos over the next couple of weeks. I'm probably going to be releasing them a lot more quicker because I'm doing my standard end of the year, beginning of the year thing. So my yearly wrap up, worst books of the year, best books of the year, and then probably also some reading plans for 2026. So stay tuned for that quite soon. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, please do so, and I will see y'all next time.